Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. I'm joined by Caroline Bowler of BTC Markets. Caroline, good
Hello,
to see you.
How are you doing?
Fantastic, how are you?
It's a very warm night here at Hall Wilcox.
It
very
is,
warm
Now,
night.
it's been an absolutely massive year for the industry. What's been the big highlight for you in BTC Markets?
Well, I think probably the highlight, same for everybody, the speed at which we have managed to move the conversation in Australia at very senior legislative levels around cryptocurrency. No one's afraid of it anymore. Everyone kind of understands, okay, this has gone mainstream and let's get involved and see how we can all make it better for Aussies here. So really exciting. So it was a really big milestone, I think. The conversation in March to the conversation now in December, It's gone so far. So for us, that's been, and for BTC Markets, it's probably, we've more than doubled our team in size. Our clients have done $10 billion of trade in a year. It's been a fantastic bumper year for us, I'm sure everybody else in the industry. Yes, it's been great.
Awesome. Now, you've been in this space for quite some time. You're in financial services previously. You've always been kind of around the fintech space as well. If you look at the kind of journey that that those industries have been on, and where blockchain is at, it's still a very, very kind of nascent or very early stage.
Yeah.
Where are you kind of putting it on that spectrum of growth?
I can remember being in fintech rooms this is in Singapore back in about 2014, and the excitement and energy that was there at that time, and that feeling of, this is going to really transform and shape financial services for everybody in a better way. And now I look back and go, we didn't know what was coming. I think now that I look at where we are with cryptocurrency and digital assets and how that's really going to be impactful, I'm very excited. So I think it's we went mainstream last year. CBA announcement this year is very important locally, but just globally, the conversation has moved on everywhere. So it's past the point. I think this year in 22 we're going to see a lot more consolidation happen amongst the businesses here in Australia. There's only 25 million people. There's an awful lot of DCEs. So that's going to be a fun one to see how that all shakes out. But I think that the pace is going to stay unrelenting. And so we get a night off tonight and then back to it again tomorrow.
So, if we were just to talk about some of the progress that's been made, BTC Markets had a report just a couple of months ago which had some really telling signs of kind of consumer behaviors. What were some of the kind of real standouts from that report?
Yeah, I think for me it's probably the fact that over 25% of our client base is over the age of 45. So this conception that it's just for young guys, sitting at home in their hoodies, tapping away on the computer, it's just simply not the case. Yeah. So we saw that older age demographic come in. We saw them invest in much larger amounts than the younger cohort. But we also saw a dramatic uptick in the number of SMSFs that have been coming in. And the time horizon of an SMSF investment strategy is so different from, again, that perception of day traders who are just moving in and out of the market. So for us at BTC, that's still something we've seen a very, very clear trend, and that's remained quite consistent. For us, so what I'm expecting demographically is probably to see a shift in terms of more women coming on board. I suspect that's probably what we're going to see in 22. And it's important to note, that they invest differently. Their time horizons and behavior is different from men investors. Both equally valid, and both are necessary. Women tend to invest in a more considered way, and they tend to just hold onto their assets. Younger men, as we know, love to kind of move it in and out, and we need both of those in the market to kind of really make for price transparency and so on. So really good to see, and I think we're going to see more of that trend in 22.
Brilliant. You mentioned, just touched on that, the big four banks now have come into the space. Debanking's been a huge issue. What do you think is going to happen with that in 2022? Yeah,
it's really ironic. So we've been debanked a couple of times this year, and even after we had our announcement of our partnership with Vault Bank, so we've got a bank partner, and we were still debanked by somebody else 6 weeks later. So it still happens. It's like, I don't know how much more you want from me. Like we've done all we can possibly do. So I think that the argument to debank DCs, particularly the long and well-established DCs, it just is not credible anymore. It's just not valid anymore, and it's moving into very monopolistic behavior, and that's probably a point to be addressed. there's enough infrastructure around the industry with the likes of Elliptic and Chainalysis to really point to, well, this is the behavior of consumers, this behavior of where the crypto is coming in and out of these exchanges. And, I look around and think about, my peers, say the likes of Independent Reserve, who've been in business, as long as we have, and they likewise operate a very tight ship, and it's unfair to all of us in the industry to keep us all clumped together with this old-fashioned perception of what cryptocurrency is actually about.
We're coming up to Christmas break, Caroline. How do you plan to spend the time off, or are you having a break?
So I'm having Christmas Day, and in Ireland we call it St. Stephen's Day. Here it's Boxing Day. I'm taking both those days off. I've already had the party with the in-laws. I did the Christmas dinner last Sunday. So Christmas Day is off. I'm on a lilo in our pool. We've got a floaty that we're going to fill with champagne, and that's how I'm spending 2 days, is on the pool in Melbourne, and then back to work. So I get a couple of days off.
I think that's how I'm going to spend my Christmas Day as well now. Well, Caroline, fantastic to see you. I mean, well done on an amazing year. Brilliant. And look, can't wait to do it all again in 2022.
Thank you, Dexter. Really appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers. So I'm joined by Paul Kang of Entersoft, winners of Solution Provider of the Year. Well done, Paul.
Thank you, Dexter. It's a pleasure to win the award.
Awesome. Now, you and I, we've spent many a night at Fintech events, and we've been partners in crime. Here we are at a blockchain event. What do you think is the kind of has been the driver between this, almost like the two worlds colliding of Fintech and blockchain?
So just firstly, partners in crime in a good way, but no, Fintech and crypto, they're two different worlds, but at the same time revolutionizing the whole financial sector. So, but with that, I guess the speed of development brings about a lot of threats in applications that are being developed. Yeah. So security is starting to play a big part of both industries.
So you I guess have been heavily involved in Fintech for a number of years. If you look at the journey that Fintech's been on, where would you put blockchain on that journey right now?
Yeah, it's in its early stages. So if you look at in terms of adoption and things like that, crypto hasn't really become mainstream yet. It is starting to become mainstream. In the last 12 months, we've seen a lot more adoption. There's been a lot more investment, etc., go into it. But at the same time, it comes with different threats to what Fintech has. Especially around the digital asset side of things, tokenization. The crypto space has various different threat vectors to the Fintech side of things. So if you look at things like Telegram, you're able to open up investors, and you're able to open up chat groups which have hundreds and thousands of potential consumer or retail investors which can buy tokens. But from there, it also gives the opportunity for cyber criminals to target those investors. So it's different threats to the Fintech side of things, but it's just the speed of development and the amount of funding that's going into crypto at the moment has made it a lucrative environment for cyber criminals.
Yeah. So other than winning this award, what's been the highlight of the year for Entersoft?
Yeah, it's been a long journey. So I guess going back to 2016 when we started working with one of our first fintechs, Proviso, My Bank Statements. We're fortunate to start working with crypto exchanges, and we've just seen that space gradually grow. But just the opportunity to assist organizations build secure products and take those out into the real world, and being part of that journey it's a rewarding experience, but we're just seeing more and more sort of uptake as well, and proactive measures that companies are taking. So I guess the past 2 years, everyone's been going through the COVID impact and lockdowns, etc. So hopefully there's the bright light and things start opening up. Having more in-person events, etc., gives us the opportunity to become partners in crime once again. So no, looking forward to 2022. I guess off the back of COVID, it's really fast-tracked digitalization. I think the next year ahead, we'll see a lot of these companies come to fruition where there's sort of those real-world use cases.
And how are you going to relax over this Christmas and New Year period?
Cybersecurity is 24/7, so unfortunately don't get to relax.
Well, Paul, it's great to catch up. Once again, well done to you and the crew at Entersoft, and great to see you again.
No worries, Dexter. Pleasure. And no, thank you for all your support to the fintech crypto sectors. Appreciate it.
So I'm with Carl Moen, He's the country manager from Crypto.com and the winner of Crypto or Blockchain Organization, International Organization of the Year. Carl, great to see you.
Great to see you again, Dexter. Thank you very much for having a chat with me.
Mate, congrats on the award. What does it mean to you?
Oh, very excited. We're relatively a young company, relatively new in Australia, and to be able to achieve this is a big achievement in its own right, and it's thanks to the team and all the hard work that they've put in.
Awesome. Now, you and I usually get together at Fintech events.
That's
Last
right.
time we caught up was March 2020 at a payments event.
That's correct.
What are you doing at a blockchain event? What am I doing at one?
It is the future, Dexter. You know that Fintech promised this dream of democratizing finance,
Yeah.
right? And it got to a point, and I think it is provided a little bit of the same, and it's not really disrupted the ecosystem, right? Blockchain is a whole new level. We have people earning funds and money using blockchain games, for example, in Philippines during COVID. And that to me was, when I read about that, that's a game changer for me. This is the things that Fintech dreamt of, empowerment, financial inclusion, all of these combined. That's what we were hoping for, and now blockchain is delivering it.
Awesome. Now, it's been a breakthrough year for blockchain in 2021. I likened it very much to, the mood, certainly earlier this year, was very much to the end of 2018 in FinTech. We've come to the end of 2021, and I have to say that I just feel like it's just exploded this year. And I think it's like 3 years ahead of where I expected it to be already. What's your thoughts?
It has been a phenomenal year. And I think a number of factors have driven this, right? One is, if you think about the financial system and the actual explosion of number of cryptocurrencies, of crypto players, that's gone really well. The second is, I sense that maybe COVID has had something to play with it. People had more time to learn, to digest information. They're not just busy with their day-to-day lives. And they were looking at alternatives. How else could I participate in an economy that maybe would have left me? For example, the youth today can't get into the property ladder. Or share prices have skyrocketed so much in the last couple of years. They are looking for alternate investment to build their nest egg, and crypto is proving to be a good class of investment.
Absolutely. Now, Crypto.com, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about you guys and where people can find out more?
Totally. Look, Crypto.com, we've been around since 2016. We've had a phenomenal growth year. In fact, we believe that, in the next 2 years, there'll be hundreds of millions of people participating in the crypto economy. We want to power that. We want to be the platform that actually supports that. And we've been really good in that. We've just launched a Visa-backed prepaid card as well. It's one of the fastest growing crypto-backed card in the world. And it's trying to give as much benefit to consumers as we can in the crypto economy.
Incredible. And finally, we're nearly at the end of another year. What's your big prediction for 2022?
Look, I normally don't like predicting on coin or tokens or that, but generally I think there's a few things that's going to happen. Number one, the general acceptance that crypto is going to be a mainstream investment class. And we see that already through ETFs and major super funds getting into it, at least in Australia. The second is we're going to see a larger number of people participating in crypto investing, and either through banks or through crypto platforms like us and Crypto.com that they trust with, which have the proper regulatory licenses and so forth. And finally, I think in my view, this whole thing about metaverse is only beginning, right? NFTs and metaverse are only a start. We see games and all of that coming into play, and in fact, we think that, I think that that's going to be the next growth place.
Well, we've got my beautiful wife holding the camera there, and she can attest that our kids are already deep into the metaverse with Roblox, and it's already happening. It's where's the I guess the mechanics behind the token exchange or the digital currency within those games isn't quite there. Kids are obsessed with their avatars, and it's amazing, right? It's already happening.
Absolutely. I've got a few, profile pic NFTs, and my wife can't get it, right? But what I was suggesting to a lot of people who don't get this is that we live so much in the online world today, whether through communication channels like social media or WhatsApp and chat channels. And that's the image that people have of us. And these avatars, they represent who we are. And we like to actually, the way we dress is a good example. So the avatars themselves act as a representation of our inner being. And that's what profile pic NFTs are. And I just want to say this, kids on the metaverse. Everyone thinks this is like a second reality world. It is not. Kids know that this is a game that they're playing, but now the objects that they create, for example, with sandbox with Minecraft, if it's a good comparison, where I could now create objects, and these objects have value. They are my creation, and it's a way to teach kids about, participating, learning about creating an economy. And I think it's going to be a beautiful world in the future.
Awesome. Well, Carl, congrats again.
Thank you.
Well
very
done
much.
to you, and congratulations to everybody at crypto.com. And we hope you have a wonderful end to the year.
Thank you very much, Dexter, and wish you all the best too.
So I'm with Chloe White, Blockchain Leader of the Year, Advisor of the Year. How do you feel?
I am just so touched by everyone's support, and it's a real privilege to win these awards in the quality competition that we did have. So I couldn't be happier.
Now, it's been a breakout year, not just for the industry, but for yourself as well. It's a really remarkable journey. How have you achieved it?
Thank you, I really appreciate it. It has been a very full year between the National Blockchain Roadmap and then launching Genesis Block. But what ties it all together for me is it's always been about trying to drive Australia forward together. We've been big contributors to the policy discourse, and then we had a huge win yesterday where we saw the Treasurer give his speech and announce a path forward for Australian regulatory reforms. We're really proud of the contribution that we were able to make through our advice to Blockchain Australia and to others in the industry. It's also been really exciting for me getting to branch out, aside from doing government policy work, also getting to advise companies on strategy and advising investors as well. So that's something that I have really taken a lot of pleasure from.
Now, it's I think I would describe the way in which you conduct yourself in this industry as elegantly fearless. It's been a little contentious at times this year, particularly with the policy work. What do you think has been the biggest outcome, out of everything that's happened this year, and what are you most proud of?
I think that one of the key drivers of the success that we've had in influencing government has been the high level of coordination that's gone on in the industry, and being able to build that trust and encourage people to work together was something that I really believed was going to be important for us to get to where we are now. And I think the last 24 hours has really vindicated that strategy. So I'm really proud that I've had the opportunity to help coordinate and lead on our industry's leaders to help bring some of that together, and also being able to bring together a talented team and being able to work with the best clients in the business. I'm really proud of my client book, and it's just a wonderful thing to be able to see the difference that you can make in a short space of time working directly with CEOs and boards. So it's been a treat.
I've interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs over the last 5-6 years. We've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs. There aren't many who I've dealt with who've come from a government agency. So it's pretty remarkable what you've done. What's been the biggest learning for you on that entrepreneur journey?
The biggest thing that I've learned has been to embrace uncertainty, to embrace not knowing what's going to happen at every step, and just to trust the process and know that there is always a path through, there's always another opportunity around the corner. So being able to keep an open mind is something that I think has really helped me a lot, and it's been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned.
It's been a breakout 2021, I keep saying this, but what are your predictions for 2022, Chloe?
As long as you don't ask me to predict the Bitcoin price. I don't know what's going to...
No, I was going to ask Shiba, actually. I'm all in.
I haven't got Shiba in my model, but I think that next year is going to be... we're going to have the privilege of better problems to solve, better challenges to take on. There is a lot more work that does need to be done in terms of figuring out the detail of what this regulatory pipeline looks like. I think that having bad regulation is worse than having none, so we want to make sure that we do actually move forward in a way that is going to get the result that we want. So, that's something that I'm going to be focused on, but as well, one of the big areas of focus that I have at the moment is helping traditional finance to understand the crypto asset space. There's still a lot of misunderstanding there, and I think that people are still talking past each other. So I want to see what I can do to help educate people who are new to the space. I'm going to be launching a pro bono program for startups. I'm going to be working more with investors and venture capital. So there's a lot of work to do, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
What's your thought as to kind of where the people in this room can actually take this? And are we, am I being crazy, or are we about to embark on something just completely different to anything we've ever known before?
I think people are going to surprise us with how innovative they're going to continue to be. When we look at how quickly the blockchain industry has changed from 12 months ago, the way how NFTs have exploded and taken over other industries, I personally am also still very excited about DeFi, and that's something that I remain very bullish on. I have a big passion for finance and economics, so that's something that I'm paying attention to. I think that there are lots of financial primitives that have been carried across to the blockchain, but what I'm looking to see happen next is what will be the entirely new innovations that take us beyond merely a copy and paste of old finance into blockchain finance, but actually deliver new products and services that we haven't seen before, and how consumers are going to react to that. Everybody knows that Australia is a playground for fintech because we do have a consumer population that loves to be early adopters of fintech technology. So I think that this is a really great opportunity for the Australian industry to experiment and innovate and to see what consumers respond to, but I can't wait to see what people come up with.
Well, Chloe, congrats again on an absolutely outstanding year. Congrats again on the awards, and I hope you're going to take yourself a well-earned break as Christmas and New Year.
I may go camping for a few days over New Year's, but there's no rest for the wicked in a bull market. But thank you, Dexter, for handing me the award.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm joined by Blockchain Australia CEO and was it copywriter of the year that you got?
My staff respect all the things I bring to the team, and they like it when I write things because it means they don't have to.
So Steve Vellis, CEO of Blockchain Australia, joins us. Steve, breakout year 2021 for the industry. What an end to it with this awards night, but what do you make of 2021 for blockchain?
It's been a pretty extraordinary year. I mean, I had very clear conversations with people at the start of the year where they said you just can't move the needle, no one can move the needle, there's no appetite for this subject matter. But what they missed was little steps are getting a lot of recognition. The gap between each step is sort of smaller and smaller. So that was obvious to me at the start of the year, and as the year has sort of built out, and recently with the announcement that the Treasurer made, suddenly people feel that momentum. Much easier than to point to a bunch of data points that have been built over the year and say it was always coming, and we just didn't think it was going to come as quickly, to be honest.
So earlier this year, Mr. Fintech had a chat with Mr. Blockchain U, and I think we were absolutely aligned as to how we've seen the industry progressing, not just this year, but in the future as well. And I might have coined it Fintech 3.0, and I think you summed it up beautifully, where you said that blockchain is the mesh for Fintech. That was back in March or April this year. You had Blockchain Week. What happened? What has happened since then? I think I said at the time to you that I was reminded at Blockchain Week of Cybos 2018 for fintech, but it took almost another year and a half to get the kind of momentum that we've seen the last 6 months. So what do you put that down to?
I think people don't recognise that you have to do things and you have to be seen to be doing things. And I always say to people, if you don't have the mix right, then you're doing neither properly. And I think leading into Blockchain Week, when I said I was going to do it, people thought it was a little bit silly. It's overdone. I thought, no, this is a flag in the sand. So I was effectively saying, put your hand up. This is an industry that people are excited about. And what it did do, it forced a lot of people who are in the space to also put their hand up and complain. I had a lot of people that said to me, Dexter, they said, I should be here. I said, should you? I said, well, maybe you should have told me before I announced it. So it's sort of encouraging people to create their own outcomes. And once that flag was in the sand, we saw a narrative change, particularly in the media. The media went from 8 out of 10 articles, for argument's sake, that were anti-blockchain in all respects. It shifted to 7 and then 6 and then 5. And we found, because of the mesh conversation, once people have an understanding of how complicated this is, and it's complicated, people don't understand how it fits in daily business life. Once the understanding has had, then people don't retreat back to being non-believers or to be sort of writing pieces that focus on pretty high-level views of the ecosystem. So we found once we hit that spot, we just don't go backwards from there. So that's what I think we've seen happen since April.
Now, what's really impressed me about the room of people that we've got here at these awards is, a little bit like fintech, blockchain there's a lot of sizzle, there's a lot of noise, and it quite often is hard to pick up the signals. feels to me that everybody in that room is focused on the signals and not the noise. What's your take on, I guess, just the caliber of people and the diversity of people that have all just congregated on this space? And, they've been involved for quite a few years. It's not just jumping on the bandwagon or, getting excited by what's happening in NFTs. They've been around a long time, yeah?
Absolutely. When you think about sort of the attention that's now being brought to the space, what you've observed there, and you and I spoke about, I think before Blockchain Week, I remember a call we talked about for you when you said it's very early. You remember the fintech equivalent of this thing. The immaturity of the ecosystem makes it easy to identify people who are doing things for the right reasons. I mean, people aren't looking to protect sheep stations at that point in time. They're open to building things. So that's one of the beauties of the community at the moment. It continues to be that you see people trying to build things and they're not building things at other people's expense because they just haven't been crowded out yet. Now, that's probably going to change as these industries mature. There's more to lose and mentality changes. But I think that's been the critical bit. We're in that beautiful window where people don't feel it's a zero-sum game. There are lots of winners because we've been so early in that conversation. And I think that's part of the growth phase of the sector.
So as CEO of Blockchain Australia, what's been the big highlight of 2021 for you?
It's a funny thing, I guess, from my perspective, but the respect for people who've been here for a while, Dexter. I mean, for the longest time, I went into rooms and people were characterising people who had an interest in this space very simply. They're this type of person. They have this kind of view. And I thought it was disrespectful to the nuance in these rooms and the fact that people brought in their own sort of context. So as success has come, more and more of these people have been they've been surfaced and they're getting respect. So when I watch things, like I said, the announcement yesterday, and I watch people on the news channels and people been quoting newspapers, it's just each of them individually are being characterised as the innovative people that they are, the people who are building businesses. So it's the individuals and sort of rather than a single highlight. And obviously government attention draws more and more interest into the sector. In the meantime, you can see the people that are moving the needle, which is a beautiful thing to observe.
So my last question for you is, how on earth do you top 2021 in 2022?
It's funny, the thing about a flywheel is when it starts spinning, things just get bigger. So in some respects, there's a qualitative and a quantitative outcome. The reality is the momentum is extraordinary at the minute. We're seeing in rooms, it's not one person that shows up anymore, Dexter. I have meetings where I speak to a lot of people one-on-one. It's not one-on-one anymore. It's 1-on-2, 1-on-3, 1-on-4, 1-on-5. So organisations are not represented by individuals. They have teams showing up. So what I'm finding is there's much more cut through. So by scale, I've never seen it. And I think one of the interesting things in an Australian sort of setting is a lot of the businesses here, a lot of the VCs here were slower to move. I think in natural conservatism in a lot of sort of structures that we have. But international pressure is now being felt by local VCs. I mean, there is a weight of money and interest, and those overseas VCs and the overseas funds, they don't care about geography the way historically they have. They look for opportunity. So the thing that's exciting for me is I actually think we've got enough momentum. No one has to be held up at this point in time. The roots are now in the ground, so I expect we're going to find a lot of extraordinary stories and people building businesses that you wouldn't expect that are just going to come out of Australia at pace.
Yeah, you talk about that flywheel, and I remember being in Singapore at the end of 2019, having a conversation with regulators about digital banks and neobanks and whether some would fail, and a year later one did. That discussion, it felt at the time that if a neobank did fail, it would be fatal for the industry. And in that same week, Afterpay became a top 20 listed ASX business. And it was incredible to see that arc. I couldn't have ever imagined that 12 months later that would be the discussion that we'd be having. I think there's going to be plenty of discussions like that in 12 months' time when it comes to blockchain, particularly around DeFi space. What's the area that's got you really excited right now? And you had NFT Fest. There was a lot of interest in that. It was a huge success. Which is the space that you think you personally you've got the most interest in?
The NFT stuff for me is just, I love the fact it's a very digestible way for people to sort of be onboarded into this conversation. So I'm enjoying watching that, just from the perspective that I think it is the great enabler in this subject matter. That's one end of the spectrum. The decentralised finance space, which is clearly buzzy, but the reality, if you dive into what people are building, the building blocks of finance that are being created at the moment, for mine, are extraordinary. And the main thing that I focus on there is, these are not permissioned, accessed regimes, protocols, or others. You can invest your time, you can invest your money, you can build. So I'm watching people who are making a purposeful decision to build these tools out, and then not stopping other people from doing it, the stackability of their side. So the DeFi space is extraordinary to watch, and I think clearly creates a lot of uncertainty for the regulators. But what we're finding is, there's people, it's everyone on a spectrum when it comes to looking at this thing. There's a risk spectrum as well, and some businesses probably shouldn't be built in Australia, and I'm happy to say to people, I just don't think this is a jurisdiction that's so forward-leaning. But what we're finding is, through the work of the likes of Senator Andrew Bragg, where they're saying we know the technology moves towards something like a DAO. So the reality there is people didn't really care or know what a decentralised autonomous organisation was, and suddenly government has been forced to figure it out. Regulators are being forced to figure it out. People in mainstream business are being forced to figure it out. So they're the signposts of where we're going. So I think we're going to see some incredible businesses being built out in the short term.
And finally, we're going to have a big party after we have this chat. How on earth are you going to recover and take a break over the Christmas and New Year?
Dexter, I'm one of the most boring people you know. I think I've told you before. The reality is barely had a drink
My
this
wife's
year.
here. I think she'll contest that.
Look, the reality here is I'm looking forward to tonight. My own wife has suffered my failings, which is an obsession in this space. We'll spend a couple of days together. The truth is, on Monday we in earnest start planning for Blockchain Week 2022, which will be the mother of all comings together of this ecosystem. So that's Monday. So I'm going to afford myself Friday, some quality time, but on Monday, back to work to sort of build out hopefully what's going to be extraordinary coming together of people in 2022.
Well, Steve, congrats to you and the team at Blockchain Australia for an absolutely just breathtaking year. It's a real privilege for Tier 1 people to support these events and support the Blockchain Leader of the Year award as well. And we can't wait for Blockchain Week 2022. Bring it on.
Thanks, Dexter. Appreciate all this.
I'm joined by a good friend of Tier 1 people, good friend of the Fintech Chatter podcast, Nikki Ariasinghe from Chainlink.
Hey Dexter, great to be here.
Mate, so good to see you. It's been quite a while. Was it April this year? Blockchain Week was the last time we caught up. It's hard to believe what's gone on this last 7 months.
Mate, April, it sounds like a lifetime ago. I think the sector's just doing amazing things. There's just so much happening. It's incredible.
So Chainlink, doing some amazing work as well. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, it's really about bringing secure off-chain data onto a blockchain, which is actually a really, really hard problem to solve. But for people who've heard about DeFi, decentralized finance, we provide price feeds that allow you to price assets. So if you can imagine what's the price of Bitcoin right now, Chainlink is the way you can do that securely in a decentralized way. And in fact, we power about 3/4 of the entire DeFi industry.
Big announcement yesterday, but a few weeks ago, probably I would say a more remarkable announcement when CBA decided to get into the space. What did you make of that?
I was impressed, honestly. I think the pace of change in Australia is just tremendous. And I think those of us who've been in the sector for quite a long time were obviously optimistic, but expected quite a lot of challenges and hurdles to kind of jump through. And suddenly you obviously had the CBA announcement, which is tremendous. And I think that's a real value add for their customers. Yeah. And then obviously you had the announcement yesterday with the government about Josh Frydenberg about what's coming out in terms of the Senate inquiry and so on. It's tremendous. I think it's just a real boon for the industry.
I mean, what's remarkable is, crypto, digital assets get a lot of the kind of news and the headlines, but you were involved with R3, who've been doing a lot of work with banks for the last 3-4 years. And, what do you think is, the kind of bank's play now in blockchain technology?
I think that's multiple, actually. I think ultimately for us, blockchain technology can do many things. And almost you can just think about any single use case. There is a blockchain deployment opportunity there in some way, shape, or form. So you'll have various stakeholders in the financial services industry that perhaps don't want to interact for good reasons with public blockchains, and they will utilize permission blockchains. But I think there's definitely a trend amongst banks, amongst insurers, large FMIs and so on, to really engage with public blockchains, obviously dealing with privacy, dealing with AML, KYC, but there's definitely a trend towards chains acknowledging that they want to engage with public blockchains, engage with the whole world, and really connect and also benefit with the fruits of what those industries are creating in terms of innovation.
So what has been the kind of highlight of 2021 for you then, Nikki? Other than a New arrival.
I think, yeah, absolutely on a personal level, but at a professional level, I think there's two things. I think the growth of DeFi is just next level. I think what we saw in 2020 was just really a precursor, and what I'm seeing now in the sector is just a huge amount of a combination, I think, of innovation driven by super intelligent people. I cannot describe the level of intelligence and drive and entrepreneurship of people that I'm meeting in the DeFi sector. So the products that we're seeing, the deployments we're seeing in DeFi is really just the precursor of what will just accelerate in future. So I think that's just really going to be tremendous. And that's coupled with what we see as a convergence between what's happening in DeFi and TradFi or traditional finance. Yeah. And that is 100% going to converge in the coming years. It's already happening.
So, Nicky, we've had to come into a quiet room to have this chat about NFTs. I think it deserves it.
I think everyone's excited. Blockchain tonight, there's a lot of drinks flowing. I was on a panel very recently with a significant DeFi luminary. And what was amazing was he was saying that, in fact, he doesn't think that it's DeFi that'll take blockchain mainstream. And he's someone who invented one of the iconic products in DeFi, but it's actually NFTs. And I can actually see what he's talking about, because the real value, I think, with NFTs is that connectivity, that almost kind of immeasurable kind of emotional component that people miss, that really connects people with what is fundamentally a blockchain-based product. So if you think about any form of art, any form of music, movies, sports, that's really what people care about. That's what people engage with on a daily, weekly basis. And that's really what NFTs bring. And so when I speak with many of our partners, particularly overseas, that are building very exciting NFT products, the types of names that are participating in not only their products, but also their equity funding rounds is just the grade A of sports, the grade A of celebrities in movies, et cetera, et cetera. So it's this amazing confluence, I think, of people who really see the value in what NFTs bring, but it's going to bring it to everybody.
Now, you talked, we've been on a fairly similar journey. I think we first connected in 2012 or 2013.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've both been, I think, seen a similar kind of arc. We've come from the fintech world. We're now in the blockchain world as well. Where do you put blockchain on that arc that fintech went through?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, and I also I always like to say that I got into fintech before it was cool. And there are some of us who got into blockchain before it was cool, and it's amazing to see that.
I've just been following you, mate. You're one of the coolest people I know. So, the best advice I was ever given was always follow the top people, right? So here we are.
Too kind. But I think blockchain is now approaching that element of becoming cool for varying reasons, right? And it could be varying all the way from NFTs, like I was just mentioning, to my dad who just decided to buy Bitcoin for the first time.
Was he talking to my mum?
No, he hasn't discovered Dogecoin yet. But I think where blockchain is coming is we're on fundamentally a 10 to 20 year journey, and we're still very much at the early edge. And if you speak to some of the folks that have been through the previous tech boom, particularly in the US, who were there in the Valley in the late 90s and the early 2000s, that they're actually typically saying, look, we're kind of like 1995, 1996, maybe 2000 if you're being a little adventurous. But fundamentally, we're still super early. And you see it on Twitter all the time, but fundamentally, we actually are early. Yeah. There's just so many people are just discovering it for the first time. It's emerging in the mainstream press. People are talking about it. People are becoming curious. People are engaging with it. And I think that's really what makes this such an amazing industry, because people are discovering these amazing new concepts for the first time and can do something with it. Yeah. They don't have to be blocked they don't need permission to do it. It's permissionless. You can go out, you can create your own DeFi protocol. You can use DeFi protocols that exist and create your own new DeFi protocol. It's amazing. So I think we're still super early, and I think what's going to happen with DeFi and with NFTs is this is just going to wash through society for the next 10, 20 years. And it's literally going to impact every single industry, every single use case you can imagine, to varying degrees, of course. But the impact is just going to be tremendous.
Fantastic. Well, Nicky, great to catch up with you again. I think we should go and do some shots. What do you think?
Time for a drink, Dexter. Let's do it.
Great. Fintech Chatter TV. Presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search.